Have you ever stopped to consider how well you truly know yourself? We often pride ourselves on our self-awareness. But what if I told you that most of us are living in a state of profound disconnection from our own experiences? Today, we're diving deep into the recesses of our minds, peeling back layers of assumptions to reveal hidden truths that profoundly shape our reality. This journey will unfold in 3 parts, each illuminating a crucial aspect of our inner world. In part 1, we'll focus on sensations, the raw data of our existence that we've largely learned to ignore. We'll discover how we've become strangers to our own bodies, recognizing only the loudest cries of discomfort while remaining oblivious to the subtle symphony of other sensations constantly playing within us. Part 2 will unravel the web of habitual translations, the stories we unconsciously, habitually weave around our sensations. We'll examine how these automatic interpretations color our perception of reality, frequently leading us astray. Finally, in part 3, we'll confront the surprising lack of logic in our thought processes. Despite priding ourselves on our rationality, we'll see how our minds often operate on outdated programming, repeating patterns that we fail to see no longer serving us. Think back to the last time someone asked you how you were feeling. Chances are, you responded with a neat label. I'm frustrated, I'm excited, or I'm worried. Not only that, but we add sometimes intricate stories to our labels, blaming our so-called feelings on other people. For instance, you might feel a tightness in your stomach and immediately think, I feel that my sister was horrible to me yesterday, and I feel I have to do this and tell her that. On and on we go. Why? Why do we do this? There's mainly 2 reasons: habit and lack of capacity to proceed differently. Our physical sensations and emotional experiences need to be fully felt and allowed to come to completion in order for the underlying issue to resolve. Our habit, though, is to constantly interrupt this process through thinking distraction, projections, interpretation, or attempts to change our experience, and thus we prevent this natural completion from occurring. Imagine you never allowed yourself to digest your food. What would happen? You'll be in more and more pain until disease will infect your body and you eventually will die. In this haste to control or understand or change or translate our experiences, we've developed this problematic habit to interrupt the natural flow, freezing our bodily sensations in their track. What happens if something never arrives at culmination and completion? It keeps on building, right? Layers upon layers of constrictions and pain, until we become experts at ignoring other bodily signals. We've numbed ourselves to everything but pain, curating a life of discomfort by default. Our senses dulled to joy, only awakened to ache. This phenomenon is like wearing blinders that only allow us to see the shadows. We've become addicted to discomfort, our nervous systems primed to detect threat and unease. It's as if we're constantly scanning a radio frequency that only picks up distress signals. In this state, neutral or positive sensations fade into the background, becoming white noise we've learned to tune out. The warmth of sunlight, the gentle rise and fall of our breath, the subtle energy flowing through our bodies, all of these go unnoticed, overshadowed by our fixation on discomfort. This selective awareness creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. By predominantly noticing and responding to pain and discomfort, we reinforce neural pathways associated with these sensations. Our brains become experts at recognizing and amplifying signals of distress, while simultaneously dampening our capacity to register and appreciate more pleasant or neutral experiences. It's like living in a house with many rooms, but only ever entering the one that's cold and dark. We forget that other spaces exist, spaces filled with light, warmth, and comfort. Our world shrinks to fit our limited perception, and we come to believe that this narrow, pain-focused reality is all there is. Moreover, this skewed perception doesn't just affect our internal experience, it colors how we interact with the world. Because we're filled with pain, we only can feel the pain in new situations, approach relationships with guardedness, and view challenges exclusively through a lens of discomfort. Life becomes a series of problems to be solved or discomforts to be avoided, rather than a rich tapestry of varied experiences to be explored and savored. Our senses, once naturally capable of detecting a full spectrum of experiences, have atrophied, leaving us with a diminished capacity for joy, pleasure, and even neutrality. How do we arrive here, though? This happens in the form of instant interpretation or translation. The moment we feel a twinge of discomfort, we rush to label it. This is anxiety, this is anger, this is sadness. Over time, these interpretations become our default neural pathways. What was once an unnatural response, the immediate translation of a raw sensation into a complex emotional narrative, becomes our brain's go-to reaction. This habit keeps us trapped in a cycle of discomfort. Instead of allowing the wave of sensation to complete its natural journey, we freeze it at its peak. The anxiety doesn't get a chance to dissipate. The anger remains charged. The sadness lingers instead of passing through. We're superimposing old stories onto new experiences, effectively living in a narrative loop, rather than in the rich, ever-changing present of what is actually being felt. This process becomes self-reinforcing. The more we respond to sensations with immediate interpretation, the stronger these neural pathways become. Our brains become experts at rapidly categorizing and labeling our experiences, but in doing so, they lose the ability to simply feel. The result is a profound disconnection from our immediate, embodied experience. We live in our interpretations rather than in our bodies. The subtle ebb and flow of our physical sensations become background noise, drowned out by the loud, insistent voice of our habitual narratives where nothing else feels true. We become rigid in our responses to life, always reacting based on past patterns rather than responding flexibly to the unique demands of each moment. In essence, we've replaced the natural flowing river of our sensory experience with a system of rigid canals, all leading to the same few destinations, usually places of discomfort and pain. This artificial system, which we've normalized over time, keeps us stuck in cycles of suffering, unable to fully process and move through our experiences. The challenge we face is not just to change our thoughts or behaviors, but to fundamentally alter this deeply ingrained habit of instant interpretation. It's about learning to stay with the raw data of our sensations, to resist the urge to immediately translate them into familiar stories. Only then can we begin to break free from the cycles of discomfort we've unknowingly perpetuated. This is where practices like mindfulness and somatic experiencing come into play. These approaches encourage us to stay with our physical sensations, to observe them without judgment or immediate interpretation. When we allow ourselves to fully experience these sensations, something remarkable happens. The sensation itself will gradually shift, change, and ultimately dissolve entirely. This is the body's natural way of processing and releasing tension, emotion, and stored experiences. In fact, this is how the body works, period. Digestion, thirst, fatigue, etc., all these resolve naturally if we provide the right environment for them, without us needing to know how that's being done, and without us having to create a story about the process. Realize this. As long as you don't allow a bodily sensation to gather the momentum it needs, to peak to its natural high and then to subside and release its grip, nothing will ever change for you. Nothing. But this realization, uncomfortable as it may be, is just the beginning of our journey. It sets the stage for a deeper understanding of how we construct our reality. As we move into Part 2, Habitual Translations, we'll delve into the intricate web of interpretations we've woven around our sensations. We'll examine how these automatic translations have become our default mode of experiencing the world, often operating below the level of conscious awareness. We'll uncover the origins of these habitual translations, where they come from, how they're reinforced, and why they're so resistant to change. We'll see how these interpretations can become rigid prisons that confine our experiences and limit our potential for growth and change. Prepare to examine the stories you tell yourself about your experiences. You might be surprised to discover just how much of what you consider to be reality is actually a complex tapestry of habitual interpretations, woven so tightly that it's become indistinguishable from the raw data of your sensations. Thank you for watching. See you in Part 2.